the first technique we're going to do is, by the way, I'm using Woodless Pencils. Most of you will probably have just your normal pencil crayons, okay, but I have a tendency towards preferring the woodless ones. It's just a personal taste. So we're going to start with using Woodless Pencils. Now the first option that we're going to do is we're going to do just a very light pressure, okay? Light pressure tends to be a bit more streaky, but I'm going back and forth. I'm not lifting up my pencil as I move back and forth. It's just a light pressure. Light pressure is really good to do when your pencil is very sharp as well. Tends to make a nice strong effect. Next what I'm going to do is going to be hard pressure. Okay, so a heavy pressure. So I'm going to press down really hard. Okay, you can see that the color comes out a lot more solidly. There are less streaks, and the texture is overall more smooth. Now when you do heavy pressure, it tends to cause a bit of a ghosty image on the pages below because you sort of scratch into the paper a little bit. So if you want to avoid that to maintain the quality of your sketchbook, it's really handy to work on a different piece of paper or to spread your sketchbook out so that only the piece of paper that you're working on is touching the table. You could also stick a piece of board underneath as long as it's nice and solid so you have a nice consistent surface to draw on. This can be a little bit tiring. I can definitely feel it in my arm just after that little bit. The next one that you're going to be doing is a gradient. Now gradients can also be done with two colors. I'll show you that in a little bit, but this one we're just going to do with a single color so you can see that effect. Those of you who are very into your hair and getting it styled and getting colored and all the rest of it probably know the phrase ombre. That's a good one to know because it's the same thing as a gradient. So I'm going to start with heavy pressure and very dark, and as I go along I am going to gradually lessen the pressure. Now right now I think I may have lessened the pressure a little too fast because I haven't quite reached the end of the box. If that happens, it's really easy. Just go back to the beginning and work along the whole surface again, but this time slowing it down. It just adds an extra layer and deepens your color. Burnishing, I'm going to start with a gradient as well. But what to burnish means is to kind of like to polish, and it gives a smoother texture and a smoother effect. So to do burnishing, you actually need another tool. Now, you can do burnishing with lots of different things. You can just use your fingers, but be aware that the oils from your fingers will get into it. You can use paper towel or toilet paper. You can use a smudging stick. Okay, Crayon, that's perfectly fine to use, or you can even use an eraser, okay? And all you're gonna do is you just kind of rub lightly. You're not trying to erase, you're just trying to create a softer effect. A really hard eraser works better for this than a soft eraser. You want that pressure, which is why some people prefer using tools such as stumps or paper towels. But as you burnish, you get a much smoother texture and it cleans up the overall image to create a very nice effect. You can see that it gets put on to the stump that you're using, same with whether if you're using a paper towel. The next effects that we're going to do are going to focus on texture. So we are going to start by looking at hatching and cross hatching. These are two of the main texture effects you'll use to get a wide variety of effects. Now, I always advise that it's better to do this with a sharp pencil, and I don't have my pencil sharpener with me, so I'm going to switch to a different version of purple, just to keep the color the same. And I'm going to hatch Now when I hatch, it's really important that as I go, it's a single stroke. I lift my pencil up and I come back down. So to slow it down, pencil across, lift up, back to the beginning. Now obviously I'm doing this a lot faster. Now hatching can look different. You can do long strokes like these, and I'll go over them just to add a little bit more value to them. Okay, but as layering them, you create a darker and darker range. Okay, and you can do these long strokes for some effects, but sometimes you want a different effect, and to do that, it's great to use shorter lines. So I'm going to use a series of shorter lines, kind of clumping them together. Okay, once again, you can see that as my pencil starts to dull, I'm losing the consistency of the effect. So just to kind of capture that a little bit better, I'm going to switch to a nice sharp red pencil that I've got over here, and you can see again. And once again, it's much more controlled, much more contained, and creates a different texture and different effect. And just like before, the amount of pressure that you apply changes the overall effect. So whether you're doing long strokes or short strokes, it's single strokes in a single direction. The next one is cross hatching. So just like before, I'm going to do some long strokes. Once again, I'm just going to show half. Okay? These long strokes go across and then they overlap in the other direction, like you're making big X's. Often students make a little mistake and they draw a series of tiny X's, which isn't exactly what I'm looking for. But you can see with cross hatching, it just overlays. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the small strokes for cross hatching. So I'm going to use a series of small strokes going different directions. And once again, you can see it creates a different effect even though you're using the same motion, just on a smaller scale. All right, the next one that we're going to be trying is layering. Layering is what you use quite often. You can use it with any of the techniques, but layering just means you apply two different colors over top of each other. All right, now this works better if you start with the darker color first. So I'm going to layer the top half of my box in this purple. And if I've chosen my values correctly, the next color should be a little bit lighter and allow me to get that variation that I want. So I'm going to switch to my next color, which is a pink, and I'm going to layer that going downwards, just so you can see the effect of putting one color over top of another. When you are using pencil crayons to create different colors, it's through layering that you create those varieties of colors, because now I have 1, 2, and 3 different colors in the same box. Now we can take that a little bit further. I can do another layer, so I'm going to take a different shade of purple, okay, and I'm going to create another section. You can see that I'm making a different color and a different purple over here. So just a wide variety of colors can be achieved just by using colors over top of one another, creating that variation. So I'm going to do a gradient using light pressure, and then we're going to do a gradient using heavy pressure, just so you can see the difference. So I'm going to start by using this purple to go across the box. But now I'm going to go with the other color and apply a very light pressure going the other direction, which really helps get the effect of the two colors blending. You can really see that better over a distance, and you can see that applying with the light pressure really gives a nice range of tones in there. So now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do this with heavy pressure. So I'm going to start quite heavy on this side and then lighten up along the gradient as I go. Because for the other side, I'm going to go really hard with the pink right across the whole thing, so you can see the effect as it changes the color. Okay, so now I'm going to go quite hard with the pink across the other side. Although I said we were going to do 12 boxes, I'm going to add one last section. If you remember your color theory, the complementary color for purple is yellow. So I'm going to do a gradient a little bit longer, showing the range of colors and what happens as you blend the two colors across to get that variety. So this is going to be purple plus yellow, because we are layering complements. So now I'm going to grab a yellow, hard on one side, and I'm just going to layer along. So you can see that that purple adds a nice little shadow to the yellow, which might be really helpful when you're using yellow as your main color, but wanting to achieve a bit of a shadow within it. As I start to get into the deeper purples, you can see that that yellow is really starting to give a little bit more depth to what's going on with the purple. Even though it's a lighter color, it still continues to change and affect the purple and really get a nice range. You can see that by adding yellow, I still got some nice grays like I did here, but it's got just a little bit more depth to it, a little bit more interest to it, more visually dynamic. It's a really good way to make sure you capture the light, is not just necessarily going for gray or just using a single color to create a value, but rather incorporating different colors in. So I'm going to go with the purple across one last time. The more you layer it, the more the pencil crayon itself and your own hand going over the work helps burnish it and really polishes up that surface. Okay, that's all for now when it comes to basic techniques using pencil crayons. Thanks.